Salvete discipuli. So we have made it through all of the declensions, and so now we are beginning adjectives, and this video is your notes video on adjectives. So if you're watching this for class, please start with a blank sheet of paper. You can even pause the video whenever you need to sort of catch up with notes. I'm going to move fast just so it's a shorter video, but just know that you can pause it. Adjectives. There are two kinds of adjectives in Latin. The first category of adjectives are first and second declension adjectives, and that's what we're going to be taking notes on in this video. The second category of adjectives are third declension adjectives, and I'm going to let you know in this video that they exist, but we're not taking notes on those adjectives. And so what does that mean, first and second declension adjectives and third declension adjectives? I thought you said we were done with the declensions. Well, we're done learning all of the declensions. The good thing is that in this video, you're not learning any new endings. You already know the endings that you need to be able to put on the adjectives, so that is the good news. So first and second declension adjectives are adjectives that use the endings from the first and the second declensions. Now remember, that was 3 charts because we have a first declension chart, and we have a second declension masculine chart, and a second declension neuter chart. And so that's 3 charts worth of endings, but there are 3 charts worth of endings that you already know. And so certain adjectives can have put on them any of those endings. And what a third declension adjective means is it uses endings from the third declension. And we'll get to those when we get to those. What it doesn't mean, what first and second declension adjective does not mean, is it doesn't mean that you can only use these adjectives on first and second declension words. You can use them on any word. And I'm going to show you your first one in just a second. It's going to be your model adjective. But you can use this model adjective. In fact, I'll show it to you right now. The model adjective we're going to use is magnus This is the dictionary form. The dictionary form for an adjective looks a little different, and it means something a little different than the dictionary form from a noun looks like. So right away, a dictionary form from an adjective, let's do servus, okay? Servus, servi. A dictionary form had 2 parts to it. And what were those 2 parts? The first part of the dictionary form was the nominative, and the second part of the dictionary form was the genitive, nominative singular and genitive singular. Oftentimes, the genitive singular is needed to be able to know what the stem of a word is, right? And so that's why those 2 parts were part of the dictionary form for nouns. In an adjective, we have 3 parts to the dictionary form: magnus, magna, and magnum. We sometimes say magnus aum for short, but what this really means is magnus with a second declension masculine ending, magna with a first declension nominative ending, nominative singular, and magnum with a neuter, a second declension neuter ending. And what that is short for is magnus means not just magnus, but magnus and all the endings that belong to the second declension neuter. Let's review by singing the song. Us, e, o, o, e, orum, is, os, is, us, e, o, e, orum, is, os, is. So that means on magn, which is the stem, magn, or magne, because our GN sounds when we use ecclesiastical or church pronunciation, it's really a n sound, kind of like the Spanish nye. Magnus. That means we could have magnorum, we could have magnis, we could have magnos, we could have magnum if we needed to, and we're going to talk about why might we need these different endings on magne. Okay, that's what this whole unit is going to be about. Okay, for magna, That's really short for all of the endings of the first declension. Don't forget your macron. Is, as, is. And for the second declension, neuter endings we're going to use. So, o, orum, is, is, o, orum, is. Okay. So all of these endings are potential endings to put on manus aum. Why might we need all of these endings to describe a particular noun? Well, the reason for that is this rule, which I'm going to ask you to copy down into your notes. A rule about adjectives. There are two rules that we're going to learn. This is the more important one. Okay. An adjective must agree, we're going to talk about what that means, with its noun in three ways. And its noun means the noun that it is describing. Okay? An adjective must agree with the noun that it is describing in three ways: in gender, comma, number, and case. So what does that mean? That means if the noun that's being described with an adjective is the subject of a sentence, then we want the adjective that goes with that noun to also be in the nominative case, like the noun would be. Okay? So, for example, if we had, so magnus aum means big or great, means big or great. So if we want to say the great leader is, let's make it quick and easy, Caesar. The great leader is Caesar. Okay? Then, we have the great leader is the subject of our sentence. What's the noun, though, that's the subject of our sentence? Leader. Leader is the subject. Great is just an adjective that's describing leader. Leader is dux, and we need it to be in the nominative because he's the subject of the sentence, right? Dux. Now, we want the adjective to agree in case, number, and gender. So that means, what's the gender of leader? The gender of leader is masculine. So that means we're going to take from the masculine, manus, we're going to take from this chart. By focusing in on this chart and ignoring these two charts, we are ensuring that our adjective will agree in gender. I'm going to put a little check there, gender. But we also need the adjective to agree in number and case. Case just means which row up and down, and number just means singular or plural. So another way you could think of gender, number, and case is just pick the right spot from the charts. In other words, gender just means ignore two and focus on the correct one. Number and case you could think of together, just pick from the right spot on the chart, and that covers number and case both. But if you have all three charts filled out in front of you, all three just means pick the right one of these. Pick the right ending from all of these 30 endings. Okay? So that's basically what it means. So which is our nominative on here? These are our nominatives. So we have the right case and the right number. Well, it's singular. Dux is singular, so we want it us. So we want dux manius. That means the great leader. Dux manius. And then is Caesar. Is Caesar. is Caesar. Wow. Est Caesar. Whew. Need some coffee this morning. Dux manius est Caesar. Now, if we're describing a third declension noun, like dux is, using a first and second declension adjective, like manius aum is, we're going to notice that our endings are not going to necessarily match. But if we're describing a first or second declension noun with a first or second declension adjective, oftentimes our endings are going to match. So for example, if not a leader is great, if something else is great, let's say the great Gaul has a sword. Okay, so Gallus would be the Gaul, and he's the subject of our sentence, so we're going to say Gallus. And then he's also masculine, he's also the subject, and he's also singular, so we're going to say Gallus Manius. And they are going to have the same ending. They both have an us, Gallus Manius. And we said, what do we say? He had a sword. Gladium. We want the sword to be in the accusative. Habet. Has. Gallus Manius Gladium habet. The great Gaul has a sword. But we can also use adjectives with things that aren't the subject. Let's say the Gaul has a great sword. Let's say great is describing the sword or a big sword. We could say Gallus and not give him an adjective. And then we'll put our habet at the end. He has a sword, and that's a gladium. So gladius is a masculine word, but we want it to have the accusative ending now too, and he has one sword. So one great sword. So gladium manium. He has a great sword. Gallus gladium manium habet. We could even say, the sailors entered the great town. The sailors enter the great town. Okay, and so the sailors are our subject. We would say naut, naute. Now, if they're entering the great town, we're going to use in with the accusative, right? So in, so how do we say just in the town? They enter into the town. So in opid, that's our stem for town, in plus the accusative. We want to choose, well, opidum is a second declension neuter word. I want to choose the accusative, which is also in opidum. But we don't want to say in opido, right? That's for something happening already within a town. When we're entering, we're starting outside of the town and entering in the town, we're using in plus the accusative. That was a rule we learned back in when we were in the fourth declension. So in oppidum manium, intrant, right? They enter with an NT on the verb. But if we want to say the sailors are in the great town, let's just say they're already in there, here's what we would do. Naute, still our subject, in oppido, because they're already in there, they're not verbing the great town, they're already in there, so in oppido magno sunt, right? They are in the great town already. Now, if the sailors, one thing. Let's say that, let's take a look at our adjectives that are in our new vocab for this section. So manius aum, as I said, was our model adjective, great or large. But we also have altus aum, high or deep. We also have bonus aum, good. Longus aum, long. Malus aum, bad. Multus aum, which is much or many of something. Sanctus aum, holy. And primus aum, the first something. We also have some related English words to give you additional ideas for derivatives. Magnitude of the task, the bigness of the task, right? Magnitude. Altitude, how high something is. And primary concern, primus aum means first. Your primary concern should be your first concern. Okay? Let's say the sailors are in the great town, but they're also holy sailors. Naute sanct is our stem, according to this. Sanctus aum. What ending are we going to put on sailors? So it might be easy to just say sancte, but if you put sancte, if you just took the AE ending and put it here, you would be wrong. And the reason for that is because an adjective must agree in case, number, and gender. Now, naute are sailors, and sailors are masculine. Sailors are masculine. This is where it could get a little tricky. And so because sailors are masculine, we're going to focus on the masculine endings, the ones that come from us, and we're going to ignore these. And then we have to also have them agree in number and case. And so they're the subject of our sentence, so we're going to choose from the nominative, and they're plural sailors, so magni. So even though it looks a little weird, we're going to say naute not magni, sancti. Naute sancti. They don't have the exact same ending, but that is correct. They match. They agree in gender, masculine, and they're both nominative plural endings. So as I said, most of the time, if you're using a first and second declension noun with a first or second declension adjective, the endings will match. But some exceptions to that might be if we have a word in the first declension, which are mostly feminine words, but it's actually a masculine word. That will cause an exception. Other exceptions will be if you're using a third declension noun, or a noun from the fourth or the fifth declensions. There are no such thing as fourth or fifth declension adjectives. No adjective in Latin uses endings from the fourth declension or from the fifth declension. But you could certainly call a fourth or fifth declension word, describe a fourth or fifth declension word with a first or second declension adjective. And in those cases, the endings are probably not going to be the same either. And so we do have one other rule. I mentioned there were two rules. The first rule, the most important rule, is that adjectives must agree with their nouns in case, number, and gender. The second rule is there are two kinds of adjectives besides first or second declension adjectives and third declension adjectives. We have an adjective of quality. And an adjective of quality tells what kind of something. So great, magnus aum is an adjective of quality. It tells us what kind. An adjective of quality goes after the noun it's describing. So notice how we said naute sancti. We didn't say sancti naute, right? And we said in oppidum magnum in Trent. We didn't say in magnum oppidum, in a big town. We said in a town big. Because adjectives of quality, adjectives that tell what kind, the adjective goes after the noun. So as you see here, adjective after the noun, adjective after the noun, adjective after the noun. But there's another kind of adjective, an adjective of quantity. And I'd like you to make sure these get into your notes too. An adjective of quantity. An adjective of quantity tells you how many. And usually it has something to do with number. An adjective of quantity goes before the noun. So sometimes we do put adjectives before the noun. And so the obvious example from our list of an adjective of quantity doesn't tell you exactly the quantity with an exact number, but multus aum means much or means many. So many is kind of telling us something about the quantity. Multus aum is an adjective of quantity. So when we use multus aum, if we said many sailors have swords, we would say multi, we would say multi, naute. Why? Because we want it to agree, multi naute. That is I with a macron. Multi naute, many sailors. Gladios, manios, habent. Many sailors, there's an example where our adjective is going before our noun, because it's an adjective of quantity. Gladios manios, there's an example of an adjective of quality, which tells what kind of sword, big swords, have. And there is one other adjective, an adjective of quantity. It doesn't really, you just kind of have to remember this counts as an adjective of quantity, although it's not going to make sense. It's the word primus. Primus means first. So I know that really technically doesn't tell you how many of something, just because you say the first. But when we use primus aum, we're going to put it first. It's going to be easy to remember. Put the word first before the noun that it's describing. So if we're saying the first leader, we would say primus dux, right? Although sometimes you can see dux primus, which means the first leader. Or if we were saying the first sailors, you would say we would say primi naute or naute primi. Sometimes you see this counting as an adjective of quantity. So the rest are very obviously adjectives of quality, though. Adjectives which tell you what kind. And so those are your notes. We'll have a video on exercises as well to further practice these. All right. Valete.